I thought I had everything. A husband who loved me, a beautiful home, a life people envied. But on the night of our 5th anniversary, I discovered that everything I believed was a lie. And the man who would change my life forever, he was watching from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers. It shattered against the marble floor of our penthouse in Belmont Heights, the sound echoing through the silence like a gunshot. But I barely heard it. All I could hear was the voice, her voice, moaning my husband's name through the bedroom door. My legs trembled. 5 years. 5 years of marriage, of building a life together, of believing in the fairy tale we'd created. And it was all crumbling in the span of 30 seconds. I should have turned around. I should have walked away, preserved whatever dignity I had left. But something, some sick, masochistic need to see the truth with my own eyes, propelled me forward. I pushed the door open. The scene before me was straight out of a nightmare. My husband, Julian, tangled in our silk sheets with a woman I recognized immediately. Natasha Reynolds, my former best friend. The same woman who'd stood beside me at my wedding, holding my bouquet, promising to always be there for me. They froze. Julian's face went from flushed to pale in an instant. "Victoria," he started, scrambling to cover himself. "Don't." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Don't you dare say my name right now." Natasha had the audacity to smirk, pulling the sheet around herself like some kind of victorious queen. "I suppose the secret's out." "How long?" I heard myself ask, even though part of me didn't want to know. Julian stood, wrapping a robe around himself. "Vicky, please, let me explain." "How long?" I screamed, and the sound surprised even me. I never screamed. Victoria Ashton, no, Victoria Hartwell now, was always composed, always elegant, always in control. 2 years, Natasha answered for him, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We've been in love for 2 years, Victoria. He only stayed with you because, well, because of your father's company connections. Surely you must have known on some level." The room spun. 2 years. Half of our marriage had been a lie. "Victoria, that's not—" Julian reached for me, but I stepped back so violently I nearly tripped. "Don't touch me." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of them. I want you out. Both of you. Out of my life." "Actually," Natasha said, standing up with the sheet wrapped around her like a toga, "this is technically Julian's penthouse. His name is on the deed. So if anyone's leaving, sweetheart, it's you." The words hit me like a physical blow. She was right. Everything was in Julian's name. The penthouse, the cars, the bank accounts. I'd been so in love, so trusting, that I'd signed everything over to him when we married, believing in the romantic notion that what's mine is yours. What a fool I'd been. "Get out, Victoria," Julian said, and the coldness in his voice, that was what finally broke me. "I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce." I left. What else could I do? I walked out of that penthouse in my anniversary dress, a red silk gown that had cost more than most people's monthly rent, with nothing but my purse and my shattered heart. The November rain had started, soaking through the thin fabric as I stood on the street corner, realizing I had nowhere to go. My parents were dead, had been for 3 years. My friends were all Julian's friends. My entire identity had been wrapped up in being Mrs. Julian Hartwell. Who was Victoria Ashton now? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, scrolling through my contacts. There had to be someone. Anyone. That's when the black Rolls-Royce pulled up beside me. The back window rolled down, revealing a man I'd only ever seen in business magazines and society pages. Dark hair with silver at the temples. Sharp, calculating eyes, the color of smoke. A face that could have been carved from marble, beautiful and cold and utterly commanding. Dennis Blackwell, the billionaire, the legend, the man they called the King of Redwood City. "You look like you could use a ride," he said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. And God help me, I got in the car. Little did I know that one decision would change everything. But Dennis Blackwell didn't do anything out of kindness. So why was he really there that night? The interior of the Rolls-Royce smelled like leather and cedar and something expensive I couldn't name. I sat rigidly in the seat, hyper-aware of the man beside me, his presence filling the space like electricity before a storm. "You're soaking wet," Dennis observed, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over my shoulders before I could protest. The warmth of it, the scent of his cologne, was almost overwhelming. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where can I take you?" That simple question nearly undid me. Where could he take me? I had no answer. I don't know," I admitted, hating how pathetic I sounded. Dennis studied me for a long moment, those grey eyes seeing far too much. "I know what happened tonight." My head snapped up. "What?" "Your husband. The affair." "I know." He said it so matter-of-factly, as if he were discussing the weather. "How could you possibly—" "Because I've been watching you for 6 months, Victoria." The confession should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange thrill run down my spine. "Why?" "Because 6 months ago, I approached your husband with a business proposal, a merger between Hartwell Enterprises and Blackwell Industries. Do you know what he said to me?" I shook my head. "He said he'd need to consult with his wife first, because you were the one with the real business acumen. That you'd graduated top of your class from Stanford Business School. That before you married him, you were being recruited by every major firm in the country." Dennis leaned forward slightly. "He also said that after you married, you gave it all up to support his career. Tell me, Victoria, do you regret that decision?" Every word was a knife twisting in an open wound. "That's none of your business." "Perhaps not, but I'm making it my business." He pulled out a business card and a pen, writing something on the back before handing it to me. "This is the address of a property I own. A penthouse in the Sovereign Tower. It's empty, fully furnished, and yours if you want it." I stared at the card like it might bite me. "I can't accept this. I don't even know you." "No, but I know you. I know you're brilliant. I know you're wasted on a man like Julian Hartwell. And I know that right now you're wondering if you'll ever be anything more than the wife who got cheated on." He paused. "I'm offering you a chance to be something more. What do you want in return?" A smile ghosted across his lips. "Smart woman, I want you to work for me. I need someone I can trust to head a new division in my company. Someone who understands the luxury market, has impeccable taste, and won't be intimidated by the sharks in the boardroom." "You're offering me a job? Now? Tonight?" "I'm offering you a future. The job comes with a 6-figure salary, full benefits, and the penthouse for as long as you need it." He leaned back, watching me. Or you can go back to your husband and beg him to take you back. I'm sure he'd be willing to work out some arrangement where you could stay married while he continues his affair. Plenty of couples do it." The disgust in his voice matched what I felt in my heart. "Why?" I asked again. "Why me? Why now?" "Because 6 months ago, when I met you at that charity gala, you told me that you thought my company's expansion into sustainable luxury goods was short-sighted. Do you remember that?" I did. I'd had too much champagne and had been more candid than I should have been with one of the most powerful men in the city. "You were right," Dennis continued, "and you explained exactly why and what I should do instead. I went back and restructured the entire division based on your suggestions. We've increased profits by 40%. I gaped at him. "You actually listened to me?" "I always listen to people who are smarter than the average person in the room. It's one of the reasons I'm a billionaire and most people aren't." He pulled out another card. "This one has my private number. The penthouse is yours regardless of whether you take the job. But Victoria, you're meant for more than being someone's wronged wife. Take the power back." The car pulled to a stop in front of the Sovereign Tower, one of the most exclusive residential buildings in Redwood City. "Think about it," Dennis said as his driver opened my door. "And Victoria, don't let them see you cry. Never let them see you cry." I stepped out into the rain, clutching both cards in my hand, watching as the Rolls-Royce disappeared into the night. I went upstairs to that penthouse, and when I saw what Dennis had prepared for me, I realized this wasn't just charity. This was a chess move, and I was a piece he wanted on his board. Before we continue with Victoria's story, if you're loving this dramatic journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Trust me, the twists ahead will leave you speechless. Now, back to the story. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering skyline of Redwood City. Modern furniture, in shades of cream and grey, created an atmosphere of sophisticated elegance. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel. And in the bedroom, I found a closet full of clothes, all in my size, all designer, all with the tags still on. On the bed lay a note in bold, masculine handwriting. "Tomorrow is a new beginning. Dress for the woman you want to become, not the woman you were." DB, I should have been creeped out. This level of preparation suggested Dennis had been planning this for a while, but instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: possibility. I spent that night on the balcony, wrapped in one of the provided robes, watching the city lights and replaying every moment of my marriage. All the signs I'd missed, all the times Julian had dismissed my opinions, my dreams, my ambitions. The way Natasha had always been just a little too interested in my husband's schedule, his preferences, his life. How had I been so blind? By the time dawn broke over Redwood City, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, I'd made my decision. I pulled out Dennis's card and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "I had a feeling you'd call early." "I'll take the job," I said, "but I have conditions. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I want final say on all decisions in my division. I want a contract that protects me if things go south. And I want to know why you're really doing this. The truth, not some pretty story about recognizing my business acumen." There was a pause, and then Dennis laughed, a real laugh, rich and genuine. Lunch, today, there's a restaurant called Meridian on 5th Street, 1 o'clock. I'll tell you everything. And if I don't like what you have to say, then you keep the penthouse, keep the clothes, and I'll never contact you again. You have my word. The word of a billionaire who admits to stalking me for 6 months. The word of a man who's never lied to you. Can your husband say the same? He had me there. 1 o'clock, I agreed, and hung up. I spent the morning exploring my new neighborhood, using a credit card I found in the penthouse with my name already on it. Another presumptuous move from Dennis, but I wasn't in a position to be proud. At 12:30, I stood in front of the mirror in a slate blue dress that hugged my curves and made my dark hair look almost black. I looked powerful, sophisticated, nothing like the weeping woman who'd left her husband's penthouse last night. Dennis was right about one thing: dress for the woman you want to become. Meridian was the kind of restaurant where billionaires made deals that moved markets. I gave my name to the host, and his entire demeanor changed. Mrs. Hartwell, Mr. Blackwell is waiting for you in the private dining room. It's Miss Ashton, I corrected firmly. I'm going back to my maiden name. Of course, Miss Ashton. Right this way. The private dining room was intimate, a single table by a window overlooking a Zen garden. Dennis stood as I entered, and I was struck again by his presence. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my wedding dress had, and he moved with the confidence of a man who'd never been denied anything. Victoria, you look formidable. Is that a compliment? The highest one I can give. He pulled out my chair. I ordered wine. I hope you don't mind. As we sat, a server appeared with a bottle of wine that I recognized from my father's collection, a vintage worth thousands. You remember, I said softly. You mentioned it at that gala. Said your father used to tell you that good wine was like life. Better when properly aged and shared with the right people. The fact that he remembered such a small detail from a conversation 6 months ago sent a shiver through me. You promised me the truth, I said once we were alone. So let's have it. Why am I really here? Dennis swirled his wine, studying the light through the ruby liquid. 3 years ago, your husband came to me for a loan. Hartwell Enterprises was on the verge of bankruptcy. Did you know that? I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Julian had made some spectacularly bad investments. He was weeks away from losing everything, so he came to me, begging for a bailout. Dennis's eyes met mine. I gave him the money on one condition: that he would never tell you how close he came to destroying everything your father built. My father. The company had been his legacy, passed to Julian and me when he died. But Julian had insisted on being the one to run it, and I'd stepped back, trusting him. Why would you do that? I whispered. Why protect him? I wasn't protecting him. I was protecting the company, and by extension, your father's legacy. But I made a mistake. I thought Julian would learn from his near failure. Instead, he became more reckless, more arrogant. Dennis leaned forward. 6 months ago, I discovered he was planning to sell Hartwell Enterprises, to sell your father's company to a corporate raider who would strip it for parts and destroy everything. The room tilted. No, he wouldn't. He would. And he will. Unless someone stops him. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you were his wife. You loved him. You wouldn't have believed me. Dennis's gaze was intense. But now you know what kind of man he really is. Now you'll believe me when I tell you that Julian Hartwell is planning to sell your father's legacy for $30 million. Money he plans to use to start a new life with Natasha. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal went so much deeper than infidelity. This was about destroying everything my father had worked for, everything he'd believed in. How do I stop him? My voice was steel now, the shock crystallizing into something harder, sharper. Dennis smiled, and there was something predatory in it. That's why you're here. I'm offering you the chance to save your father's company. But more than that, I'm offering you the chance to take it away from Julian entirely, to rebuild it into something even greater than it was. How? You own 49% of Hartwell Enterprises. Julian owns 51%. But there's a clause in the original partnership agreement, one I'm guessing Julian forgot about or never fully understood. If the company's primary shareholder is found to be acting against the company's best interests, the secondary shareholder can call for a vote of no confidence with the board. I remembered now. My father had insisted on that clause, joking that it was insurance against anyone, including himself, making decisions based on ego rather than good business. But I'd need proof that Julian is acting against the company's interests. Which I have. Dennis pulled out a folder from beneath his chair. Financial records, email correspondence, meeting notes, everything you need to prove that Julian has been systematically undermining Hartwell Enterprises for his own profit. I opened the folder, and my hands shook as I saw document after document detailing Julian's betrayal, not just of me, but of my father's memory, of the employees who depended on the company, of everything we'd built. Why give this to me? I asked. You could use this information yourself, take over the company. Because I don't want Hartwell Enterprises. I want you. He said it so simply, so directly, that I nearly choked on my wine. I want your brilliant mind working with mine. I want to build an empire together, and I want to watch Julian Hartwell realize that the woman he threw away was the only thing keeping him from complete destruction. There it was. The truth beneath the truth. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. What did Julian do to you? I asked quietly. Dennis's expression went cold. 5 years ago, before you married him, Julian and I were competing for the same contract, a major deal that would have established my company as the dominant force in luxury development. Julian won that contract through deception and bribery. It set my company back years. So this is revenge. This is justice. There's a difference. Dennis topped off my wine. But I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to do this for yourself, for your father, for every person who's ever been underestimated and overlooked. I looked down at the documents in front of me. Proof of Julian's betrayal in black and white. The ammunition I needed to take back everything he'd stolen. What happens after? I asked. After I take the company back? You run it. I advise you. And together, we build something unprecedented. A partnership between Blackwell Industries and Hartwell Enterprises that will dominate the market. He paused. Unless you'd rather go back to being Mrs. Julian Hartwell, wondering if your husband is in bed with your ex-best friend. The image made me physically ill. I'll do it. I said, but on one condition. Name it. When this is over, when Julian has lost everything, I want him to know it was me. I want him to see exactly what he threw away. Dennis's smile was sharp as broken glass. Victoria Ashton, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership. We shook hands, and I felt the current of electricity between us. This was dangerous, working with a man like Dennis Blackwell. He was manipulative, calculating, and clearly playing his own game. But right now, he was the only ally I had, and I was done being the victim. I thought I understood what I was getting into, but I had no idea that Dennis had been keeping one crucial secret from me, a secret that would change everything. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Dennis set me up in an office at Blackwell Industries, a corner suite on the 45th floor with a view that made my breath catch every time I walked in. My title was Vice President of Strategic Development, and my salary made me dizzy. But more importantly, I had access to resources, lawyers, accountants, investigators, and Dennis himself. We worked late into the night, building our case against Julian. I learned the full extent of his mismanagement, the bribes, the embezzlement, the reckless investments. My father's company had been bleeding money for years, and Julian had been covering it up with creative accounting and lies. How did I not see this? I asked one night, staring at a particularly damning spreadsheet. Because you trusted him, Dennis said from across the conference table. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and somehow looked even more attractive exhausted than he did polished. Trust is a beautiful thing, Victoria, until it's weaponized against you. Is that what happened to you? Someone weaponized your trust? His eyes flickered with something, pain maybe, or old anger. Once, a long time ago, I learned my lesson, which is, trust no one completely, verify everything, and always have a contingency plan. Is that why you have all of this? I gestured to the mountains of evidence we'd compiled. You've been building a case against Julian for years. I've been building a case against everyone, Dennis corrected. It's how I've survived in this world. Everyone has secrets, Victoria. The question is whether you're willing to use them. And if I don't want to become someone who uses people's secrets against them. He studied me for a long moment. Then you'll lose, because Julian certainly has no such qualms. As if summoning him by name, my phone buzzed with a text. Julian, we need to talk about the divorce settlement. My lawyer will contact yours. Julian, also, you should know that Natasha and I are engaged. We wanted you to hear it from us. I stared at the messages, feeling absolutely nothing. The man I'd loved was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. Problem? Dennis asked. Julian's engaged to Natasha. That was fast. He came around the table, reading over my shoulder. He's trying to provoke you. Don't take the bait. I'm not. I set the phone down. I'm too busy destroying him to care about his engagement. Dennis's smile was approving. There's the woman I knew you could be. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. I'd called for an emergency session, citing concerns about the company's direction. Julian had tried to block it, but the bylaws were clear. As a 49% owner, I had that right. I spent the weekend preparing, going over every document, every financial record, every piece of evidence. Dennis coached me, playing devil's advocate, throwing every argument Julian might use back at me. "He'll say you're bitter about the divorce," Dennis warned. "Then I'll point to the numbers. Emotions don't lie on balance sheets." He'll claim you're not qualified to judge his business decisions. Then I'll remind everyone that I have an MBA from Stanford and was recruited by firms that wouldn't touch Julian with a 10-foot pole. He'll try to charm the board, remind them of his wins. Then I'll show them how each of those wins was actually a near miss that only succeeded because of luck, not skill. By Sunday night, I was ready. Dennis drove me to the office Monday morning in his Rolls-Royce. I wore a black power suit that made me look like I could buy and sell companies before breakfast, because after today, maybe I could. "Remember," Dennis said, as we pulled up to Hartwell Enterprises, "you're not his wife anymore. You're not the woman he betrayed. Today, you're Victoria Ashton, majority shareholder. I'm only 49%. Not after today, you're not." His smile was cryptic, but I didn't have time to ask what he meant. The Hartwell Enterprises boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Oak paneling, leather chairs, a table that could seat 20. My father's portrait hung on the wall, watching over everything. "I'm doing this for you, Dad," I thought. "I should have done it years ago." The board members filed in, most of them men in their 50s and 60s who'd known my father. They greeted me with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Julian arrived last, with Natasha on his arm. The audacity of bringing her to a board meeting nearly made me laugh. "Victoria," Julian said smoothly, "I'm glad we can handle this professionally." "Of course," I replied, my voice perfectly pleasant. "I've always been professional. It's one of my strengths." Natasha smirked at me, her hand possessively on Julian's arm. She wore a ring, a diamond so large it was almost vulgar. "You're welcome to him," I thought. "You have no idea what you've actually won." The meeting began. I watched Julian do his presentation, a rosy picture of the company's future, full of buzzwords and empty promises. He was good at this. I'd give him that. Charming and confident and completely full of shit. When he finished, the board members nodded approvingly. Of course they did. Julian had always been good at making people believe what he wanted them to believe. "Thank you, Julian," the chairman, Robert Thornton, said. "Now, Victoria, you called this meeting. What concerns did you want to address?" I stood, and every eye in the room turned to me. "Gentlemen and lady," I nodded to the one female board member, "I called this meeting because I've discovered that Hartwell Enterprises is being systematically destroyed from within, and the person responsible is sitting at the head of this table." Julian's smile froze. "Victoria, if this is about our personal issues..." "This has nothing to do with our personal issues. This is about embezzlement, fraud, and corporate sabotage." I pulled out the first document. In the last 3 years, Julian has authorized 17 transactions that directly violated company policy. He's accepted bribes from contractors. He's falsified financial reports. And he's been negotiating a sale of this company, our father's legacy, to Lawrence Weston. The room erupted. Lawrence Weston was known as the vulture of corporate raiders. He bought companies, stripped them for parts, and left ruins behind. "That's a lie," Julian shouted, standing up. "Is it?" I slid copies of the documents to each board member. "These are emails between Julian and Weston's representatives. They've been negotiating for 8 months. The sale is scheduled to close next month for $30 million, roughly half of what this company is actually worth. Robert Thornton's face went red as he read. Julian, is this true? It's taken out of context. Context? I interrupted. The context is that you're selling my father's company for personal profit while it's under your management. That's not out of context. That's embezzlement. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. I pulled out the next set of documents. Bank transfers, meeting notes, recorded phone conversations, all legal, obtained through proper channels. I looked directly at Julian. You got sloppy. Or maybe you thought I was too stupid to notice. Natasha had gone pale, realizing perhaps for the first time that she'd hitched her wagon to a sinking ship. According to the company bylaws, I continued, if a majority shareholder is found to be acting against the company's interests, the minority shareholder can call for a vote of no confidence. I'm making that call now. You only have 49%, Julian spat. You can't. The door to the boardroom opened, and in walked Dennis Blackwell. Actually, Dennis said smoothly, Ms. Ashton has more than enough votes, because as of this morning, I've purchased a 2% stake in Hartwell Enterprises from your former business partner, Gregory Mills. I believe Gregory was unhappy with how you handled the Henderson project. Julian looked like he'd been punched. You can't. That's not. It's perfectly legal, Dennis assured him. I have the documentation right here, which means Victoria now controls 51% of this company. He handed the papers to Robert Thornton. I believe that makes her the majority shareholder and new CEO. The room was silent, except for Julian's heavy breathing. This is a coup, he finally said. You'll never get away with this. It's not a coup, I corrected. It's a correction. You betrayed this company, Julian. You betrayed my father's memory, and you betrayed me. Now you're facing the consequences. The board still has to vote. All in favor of removing Julian Hartwell as CEO and installing Victoria Ashton in his place, Robert Thornton asked. Every hand went up. Motion passed unanimously, Robert said. Julian, you're done. Julian looked around the room, seeing nothing but closed faces and raised hands. Then his eyes landed on me, and the hatred in them was pure and absolute. You'll regret this, he hissed. Both of you. I doubt it, I said calmly. Security will escort you out. Your personal belongings will be sent to you. And Julian, don't come back. As security led Julian out, with Natasha trailing behind him, already crying about the ring she'd have to return, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. I thought taking back the company was the end, but it was only the beginning. Because what I didn't know was that Julian had one final card to play, and it would come at me from the direction I least expected. If you're absolutely hooked on Victoria's revenge journey, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories like this. You won't believe what Julian tries next. Now, let's continue. That night, Dennis took me to the rooftop restaurant of the Sterling Hotel, the most exclusive restaurant in Redwood City, where reservations were booked months in advance, and the wait list included celebrities and royalty. I didn't think they took walk-ins, I said, as we were escorted to the best table overlooking the entire city. They don't, but I own the hotel. Of course he did. Champagne appeared without us ordering it. Dom Perignon, the vintage my father had served at my wedding. I tried not to think about that. To new beginnings, Dennis said, raising his glass. To revenge, I corrected, and we both smiled. The champagne was perfect, and for a moment I let myself simply exist in the victory. I'd done it. I'd taken back my father's company. I'd beaten Julian at his own game. You were magnificent today, Dennis said, watching me over the rim of his glass. Better than I'd even hoped. I had a good teacher. You had good instincts. I just helped you remember them. He leaned back, and there was something different in his expression, something almost vulnerable. Can I tell you something, Victoria? Of course. When I first saw you at that gala 3 years ago, you took my breath away. You were the most beautiful woman in the room, but that wasn't what captured my attention. It was the way you moved, the way you spoke. There was this light around you, intelligence, passion, fire. My heart was beating faster. Dennis, let me finish. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. And then I saw you dim, month by month, year by year. Julian snuffed out that light little by little. It killed me to watch. I kept telling myself it wasn't my business, that you'd made your choice. But then 6 months ago, I saw something in your eyes, a flicker of that fire still alive, and I knew I had to act. That's why you've been helping me. That's why I've been falling in love with you. The world stopped. You barely know me, I whispered. I know enough. I know you're brilliant and brave and stronger than you think. I know you have integrity even when it would be easier not to. I know that when you love something, you give it everything, and that Julian was a fool to waste that. His thumb traced circles on my palm. And I know that I want to give you the world, if you'll let me. I should have pulled my hand away. I should have reminded him that I'd just gotten out of a 5-year marriage, that I wasn't ready for this, that jumping from one powerful man to another was a terrible idea. Instead, I said, I can't promise you anything. Not yet. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for a chance. And God help me, I wanted to give him one. But before I could answer, my phone rang. The number was blocked, but something made me answer it. Victoria Ashton. Speaking. This is Detective Morrison with the Redwood City Police Department. I need you to come down to the station. It's about your husband, your ex-husband, Julian Hartwell. My blood ran cold. What about him? He's been arrested for assault. And ma'am, he named you as an accessory. The police station was everything police stations are in nightmares. Fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, and the smell of stale coffee and desperation. Dennis had insisted on coming with me, and I was grateful for his steady presence beside me as Detective Morrison explained the situation. 2 hours ago, Julian Hartwell attacked a man named Gregory Mills outside a bar in downtown Redwood City. Mills is currently in the hospital with a broken jaw, 3 cracked ribs, and a concussion. Gregory Mills, the man who'd sold his shares to Dennis, the man who'd given me the majority stake in my company. Why would Julian attack him? I asked. According to witnesses, Mr. Hartwell accused Mr. Mills of betraying him. He was also overheard making threats against you, Miss Ashton. Detective Morrison pulled out a notebook. Multiple witnesses heard him say, and I quote, Victoria and that bastard Blackwell think they've won. They have no idea what's coming. I felt cold all over. I had nothing to do with any assault. We know that. But Mr. Hartwell is claiming that you and Mr. Blackwell conspired to manipulate Mr. Mills into selling his shares as part of a larger scheme to destroy him. He's alleging fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. That's ridiculous, Dennis said, his voice deadly calm. Every transaction was legal and above board. Victoria never even met with Gregory Mills. I believe you. But Mr. Hartwell has hired a very expensive lawyer, and they're making a lot of noise. I need to ask you both some questions, just to cover all the bases. The next 2 hours were exhausting. We went over every detail of the board meeting, the purchase of shares, my interactions with Julian. Detective Morrison was thorough, but fair, and by the end, it was clear that Julian's allegations wouldn't stick. He's grasping at straws, Morrison said finally. But I have to warn you, men like Julian Hartwell don't give up easily. He's humiliated and angry, and that makes him dangerous. I'd recommend you both be careful for the next few weeks. What about Julian? I asked. Will he stay in jail? He made bail an hour ago, but he's not allowed to contact either of you directly. If he tries, call me immediately. As we left the police station, dawn was breaking over Redwood City. Dennis's driver was waiting with the Rolls-Royce. I should have anticipated this, Dennis said once we were in the car. Julian's not the type to accept defeat gracefully. None of this is your fault, isn't it? I pushed you into this confrontation. I wanted to destroy him. He turned to face me. I've put you in danger, Victoria. I'm sorry. I made my own choice. I knew what I was getting into. I paused. Mostly. I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you before. The tone of his voice made my stomach clench. What? 5 years ago, when Julian and I were competing for that contract I mentioned, the one he won through deception. Dennis looked out the window, his jaw tight. The reason it mattered so much wasn't just business. The client was my fiancé's family. You were engaged? For 6 months. Her name was Ixdora. We'd known each other since we were children. Our families moved in the same circles. It seemed inevitable that we'd end up together. He paused. Losing that contract embarrassed her family. They blamed me for being outsmarted by Julian. And Ixdora, she broke off our engagement 3 days later, married someone else within a year. I'm sorry, I said softly. Don't be. Looking back, I realized she never loved me. She loved what I represented. The power, the wealth, the status. When I showed even a moment of vulnerability, of failure, she was gone. He finally looked at me. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. When I said I've been falling in love with you, I meant it. But I also need you to know that part of what drove me to help you was revenge. Against Julian, yes. But also against the whole corrupt system that rewards men like him while people like you, brilliant, capable people, are sidelined and dismissed. So I'm part of your revenge? No. You're the part that made me realize revenge isn't enough. When I'm with you, Victoria, I don't think about Ixdora or Julian or any of it. I think about possibilities, about building something real. He took my hand. But I understand if this changes things, if you need to walk away. I looked at our intertwined fingers, at this complicated man who'd turned my life upside down and tried to figure out what I felt. I don't want to walk away, I said finally, but I need time. I need to figure out who I am without Julian, without the marriage, without being someone's wife. Can you give me that? As much time as you need. He raised my hand to his lips. But Victoria, I'm not going anywhere, and neither is Julian's threat. We need to be prepared for whatever he's planning. What could he possibly do now? He's lost everything. Dennis's expression was grim. Desperate men do desperate things, and I have a feeling Julian's desperation is just beginning. He was right. We just didn't know how right until 3 days later, when Julian played his final devastating card. What Julian did next would make everything that came before look like child's play, and it would force me to choose between protecting myself and protecting the man I was starting to love. Running Hartwell Enterprises was simultaneously exhilarating and exhausting. I spent my first week as CEO cleaning house. I fired everyone who'd been complicit in Julian's schemes, hired new executives I could trust, and began the slow process of rebuilding the company's reputation. Dennis was there every step of the way, advising, supporting, occasionally pushing me when I was too cautious. Working with him was intense. He was demanding, brilliant, and had a way of challenging my ideas that made me sharper, better. And underneath it all was this constant electric current between us, a look that lasted too long, a touch that lingered, conversations that stretched late into the night, morphing from business to personal seamlessly. I was falling for him. I knew I was, but I also knew I needed to be careful. My judgment had failed me once before, catastrophically. "You're overthinking again," Dennis said one night as we reviewed quarterly projections in his office. It was past midnight, and the city stretched out below us like a carpet of stars. "I don't overthink. You absolutely do. I can see it in your face. You're analyzing every variable, every risk, trying to predict every possible outcome. That's called being thorough. That's called being afraid." He set down his pen and walked around the desk to where I sat. "What are you afraid of, Victoria?" "You," I thought. "I'm afraid of you." "I'm afraid of making the same mistakes," I said instead. "I'm not Julian." "I know that." "Do you?" He crouched down so we were eye level. "Because every time I get close to you, I see you pull back. And I'm trying to be patient, trying to give you time. But Victoria, I need to know if there's a chance for us, or if I'm fighting a battle I've already lost." The vulnerability in his eyes undid me. This powerful, complicated man was laying his heart bare, and I owed him honesty. "There's a chance," I whispered. My phone rang. Julian's lawyer. I almost didn't answer, but something, instinct maybe, made me accept the call. "Ms. Ashton, this is Richard Chen, Mr. Hartwell's attorney. I'm calling to inform you that my client is filing a lawsuit against you and Dennis Blackwell for corporate fraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "That's absurd. We've done nothing illegal." "That's for a court to decide. But I thought you should know. My client is also going to the media. Tomorrow morning, every major news outlet in Redwood City will be running a story about how you and Mr. Blackwell conspired to steal Hartwell Enterprises through manipulation and intimidation." My heart sank. "You can't prove any of that." "Perhaps not, but by the time the case is dismissed, the damage to both your reputations will be done." Chen paused. "However, my client is willing to drop all charges and remain silent if you agree to certain terms." "Let me guess. Julian wants the company back. Not exactly. Mr. Hartwell wants a settlement of $20 million and an agreement that neither you nor Mr. Blackwell will interfere with his future business ventures. He's willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement and walk away quietly. It was blackmail, plain and simple. Tell Julian he can go to hell, I said, and hung up. Dennis was watching me intently. What did he want? I explained, and watched his expression darken with every word. He's bluffing, Dennis said. He has no case. Maybe not, but he doesn't need a case. He just needs to create doubt. If this goes public, it will hurt both our companies. Investors will get nervous. Clients will question our integrity. I paced the office. He's willing to burn everything down just to hurt us. So we fight back. We release our own statement, show the evidence of his fraud. That will just make it look like a he said, she said situation. The media loves that kind of drama. I stopped pacing. Dennis, maybe we should consider settling. 20 million is a lot, but it's not worth losing everything we've built. No. His voice was iron. We don't negotiate with terrorists, Victoria. Julian wants us to be afraid, wants us to think he still has power over us. If we give in now, he'll know he can manipulate us forever. So what do? We call his bluff, and we prepare for war. The media storm hit exactly as Julian's lawyer had promised. By 8 a.m. the next morning, every news outlet was running some version of the story. CEO accused of corporate coup, or billionaire and ex-wife alleged in fraud scheme. My phone rang non-stop. Reporters camped outside the Sovereign Tower. The board members of Hartwell Enterprises called emergency meetings. And through it all, Dennis was a rock, fielding calls, coordinating with our lawyers, releasing carefully worded statements that defended our actions without attacking Julian directly. We're taking the high road, he explained. Let Julian dig his own grave with wild accusations. We'll just present the facts. It was a good strategy, but it required patience, and watching my reputation get shredded on national television was agonizing. The worst part was the comments. Strangers online dissecting my marriage, my choices, my appearance. Half of them called me a gold digger who'd seduced a billionaire to steal her husband's company. The other half called me a naive fool who'd let herself be manipulated by both men. Nobody seemed to consider that I might actually be intelligent, capable, and acting on my own agency. Don't read the comments, Dennis advised. They don't know you. But I couldn't stop. It was like picking at a scab. Then, 3 days into the media circus, something unexpected happened. A woman reached out to me through my company email. Her name was Melissa Grant, and she claimed to be Julian's ex-girlfriend from before he met me. I saw the news, her email read, and I had to contact you because you need to know the truth about Julian Hartwell. He did the same thing to me that he did to you. I owned a small marketing firm 7 years ago. Julian convinced me to merge it with his company, promising we'd be equal partners. Within 6 months, he'd forced me out and taken everything. I tried to fight him legally, but he had better lawyers and more money. I lost everything: my company, my savings, my reputation. I've been working as a freelancer ever since. She included documentation, contracts, emails, legal filings, everything proving that Julian had a pattern of seducing women, gaining access to their businesses, and then destroying them. I was the latest in a long line. I forwarded the email to Dennis immediately. We need to talk to her. Already on it. I'll have her flown in tomorrow. Melissa Grant was in her late 30s, professionally dressed, with the wary eyes of someone who'd been burned badly and was still recovering. We met in Dennis's office, and I liked her immediately. She was direct, no nonsense, and clearly still angry about what Julian had done to her. I should have come forward sooner, she said, accepting a cup of coffee from Dennis's assistant. But I was ashamed. I felt like such a fool for trusting him. You weren't a fool, I said firmly. Julian is very good at making people trust him. It's his superpower. She smiled weakly. That's generous of you. Most people would tell me I should have known better. Most people have never been manipulated by a master manipulator. We spent 2 hours going over her case, comparing notes on Julian's tactics. It was eerie how similar our experiences were. The love bombing at the beginning, the gradual undermining of confidence, the isolation from friends and colleagues, the final betrayal. He has a type, Melissa observed. Smart, successful women with something he wants. He seduces them, takes what he needs, and discards them. And now he's trying to do the same thing to Natasha, I realized. She thinks she's won the prize, but she's just his next victim. Should we warn her? Melissa asked. Dennis shook his head. She won't listen. People never do until they're ready to see the truth. Then what do we do with this information? I asked. We give it to our lawyers, Dennis said, and we let Julian know that if he doesn't drop his lawsuit and leave us alone, we'll release everything, not just Melissa's story, but a full investigation into his business practices going back a decade. We'll bury him so deep he'll never recover. It was aggressive. It was risky. It was perfect. Julian's lawyer called the next afternoon. My client is willing to drop the lawsuit and sign a non-disclosure agreement. He wants no settlement, no contact, and he'll disappear from your lives entirely. What changed his mind? I asked, though I knew the answer. Let's just say he was presented with information that made him reconsider his position. I smiled. Tell Julian we accept his terms, but if he ever comes near me or anyone associated with me again, every document we have goes public. He can live his life quietly, or he can be destroyed. His choice. He understands. And just like that, it was over. Julian withdrew the lawsuit, disappeared from public life, and I never heard from him again. Rumors circulated that he and Natasha had moved to another city, that his engagement was already falling apart, that he was working at a small firm in a position far below his qualifications. I didn't care. He was no longer my problem. We won, Dennis said that night, standing on the balcony of my penthouse with champagne. You're free. We won, I corrected, clinking my glass against his. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. You just didn't know it yet. The city lights sparkled below us, and the November air was crisp with the promise of winter. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt truly at peace. Victoria, Dennis said softly, can I ask you something? Anything? Have you figured out who you are yet? Without Julian, without the marriage, without being someone's wife? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm still figuring it out, I admitted. But I know some things. I know I'm stronger than I thought. I know I'm capable of running a company and making hard decisions. I know I'm not afraid of powerful men or difficult challenges. I turn to face him. And I know that I've fallen in love with someone who makes me want to be better, bolder, more myself than I've ever been. His eyes widened. Victoria, I love you, Dennis Blackwell. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. You're arrogant and manipulative, and you have way too much money for any one person to reasonably have. I smiled. But you're also brilliant and surprisingly kind, and you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So yes, I love you. And if the offer still stands, I'd like that chance you mentioned. For once, Dennis Blackwell was speechless. Then he kissed me. It was nothing like kissing Julian had been. Gentle, hesitant, seeking permission. Dennis kissed me like he was claiming me, like he'd been waiting for this moment for months and was done being patient. And I kissed him back with everything I had. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you too, he said. More than I thought I could love anyone. You've completely wrecked me, Victoria Ashton. Good, I whispered. You wrecked me first. We stood there on the balcony, wrapped around each other, as the city sparkled below us, and the future stretched out bright and full of possibility. I'd lost a husband, but I'd gained myself. And maybe, just maybe, I'd found something real with a man who saw me not as a possession to control, but as a partner to cherish. But just when I thought we'd finally have our happy ending, a shadow from Dennis's past appeared. And this time, the threat wasn't to my company or my reputation. It was to my life. 3 months later, life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Hartwell Enterprises was thriving under my leadership. We'd launched 3 new product lines, expanded into international markets, and were being featured in business magazines as one of the most impressive corporate turnarounds of the year. My relationship with Dennis had progressed from passionate to profound. We were partners in every sense, in business, in life, in love. He'd moved some of his things into the penthouse, though he still kept his own place for the rare nights when we both needed space to breathe. It was healthy. It was mature. It was everything my marriage to Julian hadn't been. Which is perhaps why I should have known it was too good to last. The first sign of trouble came on a Wednesday morning in February. I arrived at my office to find my assistant Maya looking pale and shaken. Ms. Ashton, there's been an incident. What kind of incident? Someone broke into the building last night. They didn't take anything, but she gestured to my office door. Someone had spray-painted a message across it in red letters. Time's up. I felt cold all over. Call security and get Dennis on the phone. Dennis arrived within 20 minutes, his face dark with anger. Who did this? We don't know. The security cameras were disabled. The head of building security, a former cop named Tom Rivera, showed us the footage. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They bypassed the alarm system, disabled the cameras, left no fingerprints. This is professional, Dennis said grimly. You think Julian hired someone? I asked. Julian doesn't have the money for this level of professionalism. Dennis studied the message. This is something else. That night, as I was leaving the office, I found a note tucked under my car's windshield wiper. You took something that doesn't belong to you. Now you'll pay the price. I am. Those initials meant nothing to me, but when I showed the note to Dennis, His face went white. "Ixdora Moretti," he whispered. "My ex-fiancée." We went back to Dennis's penthouse, a massive space in the Pinnacle Tower that looked like something out of an architectural magazine, and he poured us both drinks with shaking hands. "Tell me everything," I said. "I told you that Ixdora broke off our engagement 5 years ago. What I didn't tell you was how badly it ended." He downed his whiskey in one gulp. "When she left me, she didn't just leave. She tried to destroy me. She went to the media with lies about our relationship, claimed I was controlling, abusive, that I'd threatened her. Dennis, none of it was true, but the accusations nearly destroyed my company. I had to spend millions on lawyers and PR to clear my name. Eventually, the truth came out. Ixdora had fabricated everything because she was angry that I wouldn't let her control my business decisions. She wanted to be the power behind the throne, and when I refused, she tried to burn me down." "What happened to her?" "She was forced to issue a public retraction. Her family was humiliated. She lost all her social standing." He poured another drink. "I heard she left the country. I thought she was gone for good. But now she's back, and she thinks you're the reason I rejected her." Dennis's eyes met mine. "Victoria, Ixdora is dangerous. She's not just vindictive. She's unstable. If she's fixated on you—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Over the next week, the incidents escalated. My car tires were slashed. I received threatening emails from anonymous accounts. Someone hacked my social media and posted fabricated messages claiming I was having an affair with a board member. And through it all, those initials, I M Dennis, hired private security for both of us. We moved into his penthouse together, reasoning that it was more secure than mine. He called in favors with law enforcement, hired private investigators, did everything in his power to track Ixdora down. But she was a ghost. "She's playing with us," I said one night as we reviewed the latest threatening message. "She wants us to be afraid. Then we're giving her what she wants, because I am afraid. I'm afraid she's going to hurt you." I'd never seen Dennis look so helpless, so powerless. It broke my heart. "We're going to find her," I said firmly, "and we're going to stop her." "How?" "She's clearly been planning this for months. She's always 3 steps ahead. Then we need to think 4 steps ahead." I stood up, pacing. "What does Ixdora want? Really want?" "To destroy me. To destroy us." "No, that's surface level. Dig deeper. What does she really want?" Dennis thought about it. "She wants validation. Proof that she was right about us. She wants me to regret choosing you over her. Then we give it to her." "What?" "We give her what she thinks she wants. We stage a public breakup, make it look like she's won, like her campaign of terror worked, and we couldn't handle the pressure." I grabbed his hands. "It's a trap, Dennis. We'll make her think she's succeeded. And when she comes out of hiding to gloat, we'll be ready." "That's insane." "So is letting her control our lives." I held his gaze. "Do you trust me?" "With everything." "Then trust me on this." The breakup was staged to perfection. We had a very public fight outside a trendy restaurant, loud enough for people to film it on their phones, dramatic enough to go viral. I threw a drink in Dennis's face. He said things that made me cry. We stormed off in separate directions. Within hours, it was all over social media. Billionaire power, couple splits amid pressure. Then, We waited. Ixtora's response came 2 days later, a text to Dennis from a burner phone. I told you she wasn't strong enough for you. Meet me at the old warehouse on Pier 57 tonight at midnight. Let's discuss your future. It was a trap, obviously, but it was also our chance. Dennis wanted to go alone. I refused. She's expecting you, I argued. She'll be prepared for that. But she won't be expecting both of us, or the fact that we're still together. It's too dangerous. I'm not letting you face her alone. We're partners, remember? In everything. Finally, he agreed. We coordinated with the police, wore wires, and made sure we had backup stationed around the warehouse. At midnight, we walked into the trap together. The warehouse was dark, lit only by moonlight streaming through broken windows. Our footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Dennis, a voice called from the shadows, I knew you'd come. Ixtora Moretti stepped into the light, and I understood immediately why Dennis had been drawn to her. She was stunning. Dark hair, sharp features, expensive clothes, but there was something off about her eyes, something fractured. Ixtora, Dennis said calmly, this ends tonight. You're right, it does. Her gaze slid to me. You brought her. How touching. The woman who destroyed what we had. We destroyed what we had, Dennis corrected. You and your need to control everything. I didn't need to control everything. I just needed you to see that I was the only one worthy of standing beside you. Her voice rose. And then she came along. This weak, pathetic woman who let her husband cheat on her, who needed you to save her. I saved myself, I interrupted. Dennis just gave me the tools to do it. Ixtora's laugh was bitter. You're both delusional. You don't love each other. You love the idea of revenge. You love destroying the people who hurt you. It's not real. You're wrong, Dennis said. What Victoria and I have is the most real thing I've ever experienced. And you know what? I'm grateful to you, Ixtora, because losing you taught me what I didn't want. It prepared me to recognize the real thing when I found it. Something in Ixtora's expression cracked. You don't mean that. I do. I never loved you the way I love Victoria, and I think deep down, you always knew that. It was the right thing to say, and the absolute wrong thing to say. Ixtora pulled a gun from her purse. If I can't have you, she said, her hand shaking, then no one can. The world slowed down. I saw the gun, saw Ixtora's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Dennis start to move in front of me, and then the police burst in from all sides. Drop the weapon. Drop it now. Ixtora spun, confused, realizing too late that she'd walked into our trap just as surely as we'd walked into hers. For a moment, I thought she might actually fire. But then something in her seemed to break entirely. The gun fell from her hand, and she collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I just wanted you to hurt like I hurt, she cried. I just wanted you to understand. I do understand, Dennis said softly. But hurting other people doesn't heal your own pain, Ixtora. It just creates more of it. The police took her away, and Dennis and I stood in the empty warehouse, holding each other in the moonlight. It's really over, I whispered. It's really over, he confirmed. No more threats, no more ghosts from the past. Just us. Just us, I repeated, and kissed him like I was sealing a promise. With Ixtora behind bars and Julian out of our lives, I thought we'd finally have our happily ever after. But fate had one more surprise in store, and this one would change everything. 6 months later, I stood in front of the mirror in Dennis's penthouse, our penthouse now, adjusting the collar of my suit jacket. Tonight was the annual Redwood City Business Awards, and Hartwell Enterprises had been nominated for Most Impressive Corporate Turnaround. It was a huge honor, one that validated everything I'd fought for. But that wasn't why my hands were shaking. "You look perfect," Dennis said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. Though I'm biased, I'm nervous. About the award, about after. He kissed my neck. "Don't be. Whatever happens, happens. No pressure." But there was pressure, because tonight I was going to ask Dennis Blackwell to marry me. Yes, I was going to propose to a billionaire in front of half the business elite of Redwood City. It was insane. It was terrifying. It was absolutely something the old Victoria would never have dreamed of doing, which is exactly why I was doing it. The awards ceremony was held at the Grand Continental Hotel, in a ballroom that dripped with chandeliers and old money. Everyone who was anyone in Redwood City was there, including, I noticed with grim satisfaction, several people who'd written me off during the divorce and scandal. They were all being very friendly now, very interested in partnering with Hartwell Enterprises. I was polite, but distant. I remembered who'd stood by me and who hadn't. Dennis stayed by my side the entire evening, his hand at the small of my back, his presence a constant reassurance. We'd become that couple, the ones everyone whispered about, the power duo who'd overcome scandal and emerge stronger. And the award for Most Impressive Corporate Turnaround goes to... The presenter opened the envelope. Hartwell Enterprises and CEO Victoria Ashton. The applause was thunderous. I walked to the stage in a daze, accepted the crystal trophy, and looked out at the sea of faces. A year ago, I'd been broken, betrayed, and convinced my life was over. Now, I was here. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "A year ago, I lost everything I thought defined me. My marriage, my identity, my sense of self. But I learned something important. We are not what we lose. We are what we choose to build from the ruins." I saw Dennis in the front row, his eyes shining with pride and love. This award represents more than just business success. It represents resilience. It represents the choice to refuse to be a victim. And most importantly, it represents the power of believing in yourself even when no one else does. I paused. Well, almost no one. This was it, the moment. There's someone here tonight who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Someone who gave me the tools to rebuild, the strength to fight, and the love to heal. I set down the trophy and walked to the edge of the stage. "Dennis Blackwell, could you come up here, please?" He looked confused, but stood, making his way to the stage. The audience was utterly silent. "A year ago," I continued, "you got into a car with me on the worst night of my life. You offered me a job, a home, and a future when I had nothing. You saw something in me that I'd forgotten existed." My voice shook. "And then you did something even more remarkable. You loved me, not despite my flaws and failures, but because of them. You loved me enough to let me figure out who I was. You loved me enough to stand beside me, not in front of me. You loved me enough to trust me with your heart." Dennis's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box. "So, I have a question for you, Dennis Blackwell." I opened the box, revealing a platinum ring with a black diamond, Unconventional, just like us. Will you marry me? The ballroom erupted in gasps and whispers. This wasn't done. Women didn't propose to men, especially not at business awards ceremonies, especially not to billionaires. But I didn't care about what was done. I cared about what was real. Dennis stared at me for a long moment, and I saw 1,000 emotions flash across his face. Surprise, joy, love, and something that might have been tears. Then he laughed, that real, genuine laugh I'd fallen in love with, and pulled me into his arms. Yes, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. The kiss we shared on that stage was inappropriate for a business event. It was too passionate, too public, too much. It was perfect. When we finally broke apart, the audience was on their feet, applauding and cheering. Even the most conservative business moguls were smiling. "You're insane," Dennis whispered in my ear, proposing in front of everyone. "I learned from the best," I whispered back. "You've been making grand gestures since the night we met." "Fair point." He slipped the ring onto his finger, admiring how it caught the light. "Though I should mention, I was planning to propose to you next week. I had this whole thing planned, with the skyline and champagne and a string quartet." "Oh," I bit my lip. "Should I not have—" "Are you kidding? This is so much better. You beat me to it. You made the first move. You claimed me in front of the entire business community." His smile was radiant. "Victoria Ashton, you are the love of my life, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my days being surprised by you." The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations and champagne and people wanting to take photos with us. But eventually, we escaped to the hotel's rooftop garden, needing a moment alone. The city sparkled below us, and the August air was warm with the promise of summer. "Can I tell you something?" Dennis said, pulling me close. "Always. When I first saw you that night, soaking wet and heartbroken, I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. But I didn't fall in love with you then. I fell in love with you 3 weeks later, when you called me at 2 in the morning, ranting about a flaw you'd found in one of my business plans. You were so passionate, so brilliant, so completely unimpressed by my money or status. You just wanted to be right." He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "That's when I knew. You were going to be the one to ruin me for anyone else." "Ruin you?" "Completely, irrevocably, wonderfully." He kissed my forehead. "I love you, Victoria. I love your strength and your vulnerability. I love how you see the world and how you make me want to be better. I love that you proposed to me in front of 500 people because you don't care about convention. You care about us." "I love you too," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. "You gave me back myself. That's a gift I'll never be able to repay." "You don't have to repay it. Just spend your life with me. Build empires with me. Argue with me about business strategies, and make me laugh, and never, ever stop being exactly who you are." Deal. We sealed it with a kiss under the stars, and I thought about everything I'd been through to get here. The betrayal, the pain, the struggle to rebuild. It had all been worth it to find this partnership, this love, this future. 8 months later, we got married on a private island in the Caribbean. It was small, just 50 people, mostly friends and trusted colleagues. Melissa Grant was there, having become a close friend and now heading the marketing division of Hartwell Enterprises. Maya, my assistant, stood as one of my bridesmaids. And as I walked down the aisle toward Dennis, barefoot in the sand, in a simple white dress, I realized something profound. I'd spent 5 years of my life trying to be the perfect wife for Julian, trying to fit into his idea of what a woman should be, suppressing my ambitions and my voice to make him comfortable. And now I was marrying a man who loved me most when I was myself, ambitious, opinionated, strong. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, but I barely heard the words. I was too busy looking at Dennis, at the man who'd seen me at my lowest and loved me anyway, who'd given me the tools to save myself and then stepped back to let me do it. "I do," I said when it was my turn. "I do," Dennis echoed. And when we kissed, as husband and wife, I felt something I'd never felt before. Absolute certainty that this was right, that this was real, that this was forever. As we played together, the three of us sprawled on the floor with toys and laughter, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. I'd lost a husband who never truly loved me, but I'd found myself. And then I'd found a partner who loved exactly who I was. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the best thing that could have happened, because it forces you to become who you were always meant to be. And I was exactly where I was meant to be, successful, loved, and finally, completely, beautifully myself. But as perfect as this moment felt, I had no idea that the biggest decisions of my life were still ahead of me. You've been with Victoria through betrayal, revenge, danger, and love. But her journey isn't over yet. The next chapters will take you through decades of her life. The triumphs, the challenges of balancing empire and family, the moment she has to choose between control and trust, and ultimately, the legacy she leaves behind. Before we continue to see how Victoria's story completely unfolds over the next 25 years, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is where we see what lasting success really looks like, and I promise you, the ending is worth every moment. Let's continue. 5 years had passed since that awards ceremony proposal. 5 years of building an empire, raising a family, and proving that you could have it all, not by sacrificing, but by choosing wisely. I stood in the executive suite of Blackwell Hartwell Global Headquarters, looking at the quarterly reports with genuine satisfaction. Our company had just been named one of the top 10 most innovative corporations in the country. We'd launched sustainable luxury lines that were changing the industry. We'd created thousands of jobs. We'd built something that mattered. "Mommy," Sophia burst into my office, followed closely by her younger brother Kenny, who was 3 and determined to keep up with his big sister. "We brought you lunch," Sophia announced, holding up a slightly squashed sandwich. Behind them, Dennis appeared carrying a proper lunch basket and wearing an amused expression. They insisted on the surprise delivery. "Best surprise ever," I said, clearing space on my conference table as my children climbed into chairs that were comically too large for them. This was our ritual. Twice a week, Dennis brought the kids to have lunch with me, and twice a week, I did the same at his office. We'd learned that balance wasn't about keeping work and family separate. It was about integrating them, showing our children that both parents worked hard and both parents prioritized family. "Guess what?" Sophia said, bouncing in her seat. "Daddy said we can go to the beach house this weekend." "All of us," Dennis added, catching my eye. "No laptops, no phones, Just family. Deal, I agreed. As we ate sandwiches and listened to Sophia's elaborate story about her kindergarten day while Kenny tried to steal everyone's cookies, I felt something I'd never felt in my first marriage: completeness. That evening, after the children were asleep, Dennis and I sat on our penthouse balcony, the same one where he'd first told me he was falling in love with me, where we'd celebrated victories and weathered storms. "I got a letter today," I said, pulling an envelope from my pocket. "From Julian." Dennis's expression darkened. What did he want? To apologize, really apologize this time. I handed him the letter. He's in therapy, working through why he sabotaged his life. He said he doesn't expect forgiveness, but he wanted me to know that watching what I built taught him what he'd destroyed. Dennis read the letter silently, then looked at me. "How do you feel about it?" "Indifferent, mostly. Maybe a little sad for him." I leaned against Dennis's shoulder, but mostly grateful, because if he hadn't betrayed me, I never would have found myself, or you, or this life. "Do you ever miss who you were before all of this?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. That Victoria was nice. She was kind and trusting and wanted to make everyone happy, but she didn't know her own strength. She didn't know what she was capable of. I like who I am now better, strong enough to be vulnerable, successful enough to prioritize family, confident enough to ask for help when I need it. "You're extraordinary," Dennis said softly. "You know that, right?" "We're extraordinary together," I corrected. "That's the difference." He kissed me then, soft and deep and full of 5 years of partnership and love and choosing each other every single day. The weekend at the beach house was perfect. We built sandcastles with the kids, teaching Sophia about structural engineering principles while Kenny just enjoyed smashing everything. We had family dinners on the deck, watching the sunset. We took walks on the beach after the children were asleep, talking about dreams and plans and the future we were building together. On the last night, after we'd put the kids to bed, Dennis and I sat by the fire pit on the beach. "Do you remember the night we met?" he asked. "You got in my car, soaking wet, heartbroken, with nothing. I remember thinking I'd lost everything. And now, I look back at the beach house where our children slept safely. I thought about the company we'd built, the employees we supported, the legacy we were creating. I thought about the woman I'd become, strong, capable, loving, and loved. Now I know I didn't lose everything that night. I lost everything that was fake, everything that was hollow, everything that was built on me being less than I could be. I turned to face him, and that loss made room for everything real. "I love you, Victoria Blackwell," he said, using my married name with obvious pride. "I love you too, Dennis Blackwell," I replied. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." "Thank you for being brave enough to rebuild," he countered, "and for choosing me to build with." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves and the stars, two people who had been broken in different ways and had found each other in the wreckage, two people who had chosen to build something better together. The boardroom of Blackwell Hartwell Global was packed for the special announcement. I stood at the head of the table, 55 years old now, silver threading through my dark hair, lines around my eyes from years of laughing with my children and negotiating with corporate giants. Next to me stood Dennis, his temples completely silver now, distinguished and still devastatingly handsome. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "Dennis and I have an announcement to make about the future of this company." Our board members leaned forward. After 15 years of unprecedented growth and innovation, everyone wanted to know what was next. "We're stepping back," Dennis said simply, "not retiring completely, but transitioning to advisory roles." The room erupted in questions. I held up my hand. "We're promoting from within. Victoria Chen will take over as CEO of the Sustainable Luxury Division. Kenny Sterling will head the Technology Innovation Branch, and overseeing all operations." The door opened, and Melissa Grant walked in. 15 years of hard work and success, evident in her confident stride. The woman Julian had destroyed years ago was now one of the most respected executives in our industry. "Melissa will be the new CEO of Blackwell Hartwell Global," I announced. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. Melissa had earned this, had proven herself 1,000 times over. "Why now?" one board member asked. Dennis and I exchanged a look. "Because we have 3 children who are about to start college, enter high school and middle school," I explained. "Because we've built something sustainable that doesn't need us micromanaging every detail. Because we've spent 15 years proving we could build an empire, and now we want to prove we can trust others to carry it forward." "And because," Dennis added with a smile, "my wife wants to write a book about her experience, and I want to spend more time sailing. We've earned the right to choose what comes next." After the meeting, as we cleaned out our primary offices, we'd still keep smaller spaces for advisory work, I found a photograph tucked in my desk drawer. It was from that awful night 15 years ago, a paparazzi shot of me standing in the rain, looking destroyed, with Dennis's Rolls-Royce pulling up beside me. I'd kept it all these years as a reminder, not of pain, but of possibility. "Ready to go home?" Dennis asked, appearing in the doorway. "Ready," I said, tucking the photo back in the drawer for the next person who would use this office. Maybe they'd need the reminder too, that your worst day could be the doorway to your best life. Our penthouse was chaos when we arrived home. Sophia, now 15 and already taking advanced business courses, was arguing with Kenny, now 13, and determined to prove he knew more about technology than his sister. Little Ixdora, who was 8, and the unexpected surprise that had completed our family, was practicing piano loudly to drown out her siblings. "I'm home," I called out. All 3 of them converged on us. Too old for this, really, but still young enough to want their parents' attention. "How did it go?" Sophia asked. "Did you really step down?" "We really did," Dennis confirmed. "The company's in good hands." "Does this mean you'll actually come to my recital next week?" Ixdora asked. "Both of you, at the same time?" "We'll be there," I promised. "Front row, both of us, no phones." "What about my robotics competition?" Kenny chimed in. "We'll be there too," Dennis assured him. "And my debate tournament?" Sophia added. "All of it," I said. "That's the whole point. We built the company so we could have this time with you, all of you, for everything that matters." Later that night, after homework was done and children were, theoretically, asleep, Dennis and I found ourselves back on our balcony. The city stretched out below us, glittering and alive. Somewhere down there, people were falling in love and falling apart. People were building dreams and watching them crumble. People were at their lowest point, not knowing that redemption was just around the corner. "Do you have any regrets?" Dennis asked, the question he asked me every year on our anniversary. "Not a single one," I answered. The same response I gave every time, meaning it more deeply each year. "Not even Julian. Not even the betrayal." "Especially not that," I said firmly. "Because that betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me. It broke open the cage I'd built around myself. It forced me to see what I was capable of. It led me to you, to our children, to this life." I turned to face him, taking both his hands. "I used to think love meant making yourself smaller, so someone else could be bigger. Julian taught me that was wrong. And you," I squeezed his hands, "you taught me that real love means both people making each other bigger. You taught me that partnership means celebrating each other's strength, not fearing it." "You taught me something too," Dennis said quietly. "You taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that letting someone in doesn't mean losing control, that love is worth the risk, even after you've been burned." We stood there, two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their old lives and had built something beautiful from the ruins. "What do you think happened to Julian?" I asked, not because I cared deeply, but because I was curious about the aftermath of his choices. "Last I heard, he's managing a mid-level firm in another state, married to someone new, quiet life." Dennis paused. "I think he finally learned that you can't build anything real on manipulation and shortcuts. Some people learn that lesson early. Some people never learn it. And some people, like Julian, learn it the hard way." "And Natasha?" "Haven't heard anything in years. I hope she found happiness. I hope she learned from her mistakes too." It was generous of him to say. Generous of both of us to hope the people who'd hurt us had found peace. That's what healing looked like, not needing their suffering to validate our happiness. "What about Ixtora?" I asked, referring to his ex-fiancée. "Did you ever hear what happened after the trial?" "She got help. Real help. Last I heard, she's working with a non-profit helping women who've struggled with mental health issues. Apparently facing consequences and getting proper treatment changed her life." He looked thoughtful. "I like to think that even our villains get redemption arcs if they're willing to do the work." "That's very evolved of you." "I learned from the best," he said, kissing my forehead. "You forgave your enemies and moved forward. That taught me more about strength than any business strategy ever could." 6 months later, my book was published, From Betrayed to Billionaire: How I Reclaimed My Life and Built an Empire. It became an instant bestseller, not because people wanted the salacious details of my divorce, though those made for compelling reading, but because it spoke to something universal: the experience of losing yourself in a relationship, of being betrayed, of having to rebuild from nothing. And most importantly, it showed that rebuilding was possible. I did a book tour, speaking at universities and women's business conferences, and everywhere I went, women, and many men, came up to me with tears in their eyes, telling me their own stories of betrayal and recovery. "I'm in your position right now," a young woman told me after one event. "My husband cheated. I have nothing. I don't know what to do." I took her hands, looked her in the eyes, and told her What I wish someone had told me that rainy night 15 years ago. You have more than nothing. You have yourself, and that's everything. You have your intelligence, your strength, your capacity to learn and grow and rebuild. The betrayal isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your real story, the one where you become the hero instead of the supporting character. But how? She whispered. How do I even start? One decision at a time. One day at a time. You don't have to have the whole plan figured out. You just have to take the next right step. I squeezed her hands. And you have to believe, truly believe, that you are worth fighting for. Because you are. She hugged me, crying, and I remembered being her. I remembered standing in the rain, broken and lost, not knowing that everything I needed was already inside me. On the 5-year anniversary of stepping back from daily operations at Blackwell Hartwell Global, Dennis and I threw a party at our beach house. All the key players in our story were there. Melissa, now running a company worth billions, bringing her wife and adopted children. The board members who'd supported me when I took down Julian, now retired and clearly proud of what we'd built together. Maya, my former assistant, now a VP in the company and one of my closest friends. Our children, now young adults, Sophia studying business and philosophy at Yale, Kenny at MIT, revolutionizing sustainable technology, and Ixdora at 13, already showing signs of inheriting both our business acumen and artistic sensitivity. Even Gregory Mills, the man who'd sold his shares to Dennis all those years ago, was there. He'd become an unlikely friend, someone who understood the cost of doing the right thing when it mattered. As the sun set over the ocean, Dennis clinked his glass for a toast. 20 years ago, he began, I met a woman standing in the rain who had just lost everything, and I thought I was rescuing her, giving her a job, a home, a second chance. He looked at me with such love that I felt my eyes well up. But I was wrong. She rescued herself. All I did was provide the tools. She did the work. She made the choices. She became the woman she was always meant to be. He raised his glass. To Victoria, the bravest, strongest, most brilliant person I've ever known. Thank you for letting me be part of your story. To Victoria, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. I stood up, my own glass in hand. Thank you all for being here, for being part of this incredible journey. I looked around at the faces of people I loved, people who'd supported me, people who'd believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. 20 years ago, I thought I knew what happiness looked like. I thought it was being someone's wife, supporting their dreams, making myself smaller so they could shine brighter. And when that life shattered, I thought happiness was over for me. I paused, looking at Dennis, at our children, at the life we'd built. I was so wrong. Real happiness isn't about being someone's anything. It's about being fully yourself. It's about partnerships where both people shine. It's about building something meaningful and sharing it with people you love. It's about facing your fears and discovering that you're stronger than you ever imagined. I raised my glass higher. So here's to everyone who's ever been betrayed, broken, or lost. Here's to everyone who's ever had to rebuild from the ground up. Here's to everyone who's ever been underestimated and overlooked. Your story isn't over. Your best chapters are still ahead. And the person you're becoming is worth every hard step it takes to get there. Cheers, Everyone shouted, and the sound of celebration filled the evening air. Later that night, long after the guests had left and the children were asleep in their rooms, Dennis and I walked along the beach under the stars. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night?" I asked. "If you'd just driven past me in the rain?" "Every day," he admitted. "And every day, I'm grateful I didn't. You changed my life, Victoria. You made me believe in partnership, in real love, in the possibility of building something meaningful with someone who challenges you to be better." "We changed each other," I corrected. "That's what love is supposed to do. Not diminish you, but expand you." We walked in comfortable silence, the waves lapping at our feet, the moonlight painting everything silver. "So what's next?" Dennis asked. "We've built the company, raised the kids, written the book, lived the dream. What's the next chapter?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I want to start a foundation," I said, "for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal or abuse. I want to provide not just money, but mentorship, education, business opportunities. I want to do for others what you did for me, not rescue them, but give them the tools to rescue themselves." Dennis stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression showing such pride and love. "That's perfect. That's exactly right." He pulled me close. "And I want to help. We'll build it together." "Together," I agreed. "The way we do everything." We kissed then, under the stars, on the beach, two people who had found each other against all odds and had built a love that was real and lasting and true. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that my story had the ending it deserved. Not the fairy tale I'd imagined at 25, where a man rescued me and we lived happily ever after in traditional ways, but something better, a story where I rescued myself, where I found a partner who celebrated my strength instead of fearing it, where I built an empire and a family and proved you could have both, where betrayal became the catalyst for transformation, where losing everything led to gaining what actually mattered. This was my happily ever after. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real was so much better than any fairy tale could ever be. 25 years after that rainy night, when my old life ended and my real life began, I stood at a podium accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Business Forum. My hair was now more silver than dark. Lines of laughter and wisdom marked my face. My children were adults with careers and families of their own. Dennis, now in his 70s, sat in the front row with our grandchildren, his eyes still lighting up when he looked at me. When I was 32 years old, I told the audience of thousands. I thought my life was over. My husband had betrayed me, I'd lost everything I'd built, and I stood alone in the rain, wondering if I could even survive the next day, let alone build a future. But that night, that terrible, devastating night, was the night I stopped being someone's wife and started being myself. It was the night I discovered that the only person who can really save you is yourself. And it was the night I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing, because it forces you to become who you were always meant to be. I paused, looking out at the audience. So many faces, so many stories, so many people at different points in their own journeys. So, if you're going through betrayal right now, if you're broken and scared and don't know how you'll survive, I want you to know something. You will not just survive, you will thrive. You will build something better than what you lost. You will become stronger than you ever imagined possible. But only if you choose it, only if you do the work, only if you believe that you are worth fighting for. I looked at Dennis, at our children and grandchildren, at the life that had bloomed from the ashes of my destroyed marriage. My ex-husband's betrayal didn't destroy me. It freed me, and I spent the last 25 years building a life that was authentic, meaningful, and completely mine. That's what I wish for all of you. Not a perfect life, but a real one. Not a life without pain, but a life where pain becomes transformation. Thank you for this honor. But the real honor has been getting to live this life, love these people, and build something that mattered. That's the real achievement. Everything else is just the trophy. The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes, but the best part was afterward, when Dennis wrapped me in his arms and whispered, "I'm so proud of you. I've been proud of you every single day for 25 years. And when our grandchildren, 5 of them now, piled onto us asking for stories about when Grandma was young and took over a company and proposed to Grandpa on stage, we laughed and told them tales of courage and second chances and building something from nothing. This was my legacy. Not just the company or the money or the awards, but the story of a woman who refused to let betrayal define her, who chose to rebuild instead of retreat, who found real love after false love, who became herself fully and completely, regardless of the cost, and who spent the rest of her life helping others do the same. The end. And that's Victoria's complete story. From devastating betrayal to building an empire, from broken wife to successful CEO, from lost and alone to surrounded by real love and family. Her journey proves that your worst day doesn't define you. Your response to it does. If this story inspired you, moved you, or reminded you of your own strength, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because somewhere out there, someone is having their worst day right now, and they need to know that it's not the end, it's the beginning. Remember, you are not what you lose. You are what you choose to build from the ruins. Thank you for being part of Victoria's journey. Until next time, keep building your empire.